The jobs report for May just dropped at 8:30 this morning. The man now running all 18 of America's intelligence agencies has never worked in intelligence. And the Iranian national soccer team is flying to Los Angeles in 6 days to play the World Cup, while the U.S. military is striking Iranian radar sites in the Persian Gulf. It has been a week. Let's start with Bill Pulte, because what happened here is serious enough that the leader of the Senate Republican majority said it out loud. On Tuesday, President Trump named Bill Pulte as acting director of national intelligence, replacing Tulsi Gabbard, who is leaving at the end of the month. Pulte currently runs the Federal Housing Finance Agency, the regulator of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the government-sponsored enterprises that back roughly half of all U.S. mortgages. He will hold both jobs simultaneously. Trump cited Pulte's deep experience managing the most sensitive matters in America, the safety and soundness of the markets. That experience is housing finance. The job he is taking over coordinates the CIA, NSA, DIA, and 15 other intelligence agencies. Pulte has no known military service, no known intelligence background, no public record of any national security role. CBS News confirmed he has never worked in the intelligence community. The statute governing the DNI role, passed after the 9/11 Commission found that a lack of coordination between intelligence agencies had contributed to the failure to prevent those attacks, requires the director to have extensive national security experience. Whether Pulte meets that requirement as a housing regulator is a legal question his appointment will almost certainly produce. Senator Mark Warner, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, said publicly that he didn't know whether Pulte even had a security clearance. That sentence requires rereading. The man now at the top of the U.S. intelligence community may not have had the clearance required to access the material his own agencies produce. Warner told NPR that handing Pulte control of all of our intelligence agencies with all the absolutely classified things, while Congress debates whether to renew a key surveillance tool, would amount to almost unilaterally disarming in terms of Russia, China, Iran, and terrorists. That was the Democratic criticism. Here is the Republican one. Senate Majority Leader John Thune of South Dakota, the man who runs Trump's own party in the Senate, told reporters on Capitol Hill, "We don't need a weaponized DNI. We need professionals there." When the majority leader of your own party uses the word weaponized to describe your intelligence director appointment, the political calculation involved is exposed. Thune is not wrong. The word is exactly right. Pulte, in his role at the FHFA, has used his access to mortgage records to file criminal referrals to the Justice Department, targeting Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, New York Attorney General Letitia James, Senator Adam Schiff, and former Representative Eric Swalwell, all of them Trump critics. Trump used the Cook referral to justify attempting to fire her from the Fed. That case is now before the Supreme Court. The pattern is not ambiguous. Pulte used the database of an agency that handles the financial records of most American homeowners as a tool to pursue political opponents. That is documented. It is on the record. He now has access to signals intelligence, covert operations, foreign agent identification, counterterrorism databases, and the full product of the world's most powerful intelligence apparatus. He will hold that position as an acting appointee, not subject to Senate confirmation, for at least 6 months, covering the period directly through the November midterm elections. Warner noted explicitly, Pulte's acting status gives him a 6-month runway before any confirmation process would be required. The DNI was created in 2004. In direct response to the finding that intelligence agencies had failed to coordinate, had kept information siloed, and had allowed political considerations to distort threat assessments before 9/11. The job was supposed to fix that. It was designed for someone with career experience in intelligence, capable of delivering independent judgments that no president could easily dismiss. What it has now, for the 6 months leading into the midterms, is a MAGA loyalist who previously used a housing regulator's database as an opposition research tool. The mission of the office and the profile of its new occupant are not simply mismatched. They are inverted. Now the May jobs report, which just came out this morning. Bloomberg's consensus estimate going in was 85,000 non-farm payroll jobs added in May, with unemployment holding at 4.3%. ADP's private payroll count earlier this week came in at 122,000, above the 120,000 consensus, with what ADP's chief economist called more broad-based hiring than we've seen in years. April's final number was 115,000. The headline number, whatever it prints today, will be celebrated if it beats 85,000. That's the game. But the context around the headline is what tells the actual story. April's 115,000 came entirely from healthcare, transportation, warehousing, and retail. Federal government employment continued to decline as it has every month this year. Private sector growth is being driven by sectors that are either structurally insulated from energy price shocks, healthcare doesn't stop when oil goes up, or that are managing temporary inventory cycles. The sectors most exposed to consumer confidence, housing, durable goods, manufacturing, are the ones showing the most stress. Whirlpool last week reported a recession-level industry decline in consumer confidence. Appliance sales require consumer willingness to spend on large purchases. That willingness is being crushed by gas above $4 a gallon and CPI at 3.8%. Initial claims for unemployment last week came in at 225,000, the highest reading since early February. That doesn't signal recession on its own, but it signals that the floor for layoffs is rising. Continuing claims, which measure people still collecting benefits, have been slowly ticking up for 2 months. The JOLTS data released Tuesday showed 7.6 million job openings in April, elevated, which is a good sign for the labor market's structural health. But hires fell to 5.1 million, meaning employers are posting jobs they aren't filling. That is a confidence signal. Companies are parking requisitions rather than actually expanding headcount. Uber announced Wednesday it's eliminating 23% of its HR, recruitment, workplace facilities, and culture division. The company framed it as a structural simplification. The tech sector is automating the work of hiring, which means fewer people are needed to manage the workforce. That is an AI displacement story, dressed as a corporate efficiency story. And it is happening at a moment when the companies making the AI, SpaceX, Anthropic, are growing more powerful. OpenAI are about to list publicly at a combined valuation north of $3 trillion. The war's employment effects will show up with a lag. Consumer spending pulls back before hiring pulls back. Hiring confidence falls before job postings are canceled. Job postings get canceled before layoff notices go out. The JOLTS data, showing elevated openings alongside falling hires, suggests we are at the second stage. The confidence drop is registered, the structural response hasn't yet arrived. If the Iran war's ceasefire fiction holds through June and a deal gets signed, the second stage may not complete. If the ceasefire collapses, June and July's employment reports will tell a different story. Watch the numbers, but watch what they're measuring. A labor market that hasn't broken yet, in a consumer economy that's already cracking. And now, something that is genuinely unlike anything that has happened in the history of professional sports. The 2026 FIFA World Cup starts in 6 days. On June 11th, the tournament opens in Mexico City. On June 12th, the first U.S. match is at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, and that same day, SpaceX lists on the Nasdaq. But the soccer story is the one I want to focus on right now. This World Cup is the first in history where a host country is at active war with one of the competing nations. The Iranian national team qualified for the tournament. They are scheduled to play group stage games in Los Angeles and Seattle. The United States military, as recently as this past weekend, conducted airstrikes on Iranian radar and drone command sites in southern Iran. The day before this script was recorded, CENTCOM intercepted 2 Iranian ballistic missiles aimed at Kuwait. And the Iranian team is flying to America in 6 days to kick a soccer ball around SoFi Stadium. Andrew Giuliani, executive director of the White House Task Force for the FIFA World Cup, told ESPN he has spoken directly with the West Wing to communicate those dance steps as the Iranian team crosses into the United States. The phrase dance steps is doing a lot of work. What it means, translated out of diplomatic euphemism, is that someone at the White House had to figure out a protocol for admitting citizens of a country the US is shooting at into the country that is shooting at it, so they can play a sport and then leave. The DHS secretary has publicly described the World Cup threat level as extremely high. FEMA awarded $846 million in security grants to host cities. Over $250 million of that went specifically to anti-drone technology, the same technology CENTCOM is using against Iranian drones in the Gulf, now being deployed domestically to protect soccer stadiums. 400 law enforcement agencies are coordinating. 50,000 security personnel will be deployed. The White House has formed a dedicated task force. Giuliani told ESPN the security challenge is unlike anything law enforcement has faced. All of that is true. Here is what is also true. The DHS was shut down for 76 days earlier this year. The shutdown delayed the release of federal security funding to host cities. Local security officials warned for months that the funding delays were hampering training and preparation. The DHS secretary, who now says the threat level is extremely high, runs the agency that was unable to release security funding for the tournament his own agency describes as an extremely high threat. And then there is the water bottle. Fans cannot bring a reusable water bottle, an empty one, a sealed one, anyone, into World Cup venues. Security protocols prohibit it. Several of those venues will see temperatures in the 90s during summer matches in Houston, Dallas, Los Angeles, and Miami. There will be vendor-sold water available. The vendor-sold water will cost what vendor-sold water costs at major stadiums. The people who cannot afford vendor-sold water in 90-degree heat will not have access to the hydration they need. The security rationale for banning reusable water bottles is real. They can be used to introduce liquid threats into enclosed spaces. But the combination of a prohibition on personal hydration equipment and June temperatures in Texas produces a foreseeable consequence that somebody decided was acceptable in exchange for the security benefit. That decision was made by people who will be in air-conditioned boxes. That is worth naming. The tournament itself will be extraordinary. Soccer at this scale is genuinely moving. The best players in the world competing in front of 5 million international visitors across the most geographically complex World Cup ever staged. The economic activity it generates is real. The cultural moment it represents is genuine. But it is happening inside a context that has no historical precedent. A host country at war with a participating country. An extremely high threat level. A security apparatus whose preparation was disrupted by the very political dysfunction that also drove the war. And an intelligence director with no intelligence experience now overseeing whatever the US government actually knows about the threats it's worried about. A housing regulator with a documented track record of using government data to pursue political opponents now heads all 18 US intelligence agencies for 6 months through the midterms without Senate confirmation. The May jobs market is holding on the surface, while the consumer confidence data underneath it continues to crack. And the World Cup starts in 6 days, with the Iranian team on the schedule, inside a country that's been launching airstrikes at Iran since February. The thing that links these 3 stories is not incompetence. It is something more specific, the normalization of conditions that would, in any previous political era, have produced emergency responses. A housing regulator running the NSA, a war's economic damage being absorbed quietly in consumer sentiment surveys, a soccer team from a wartime adversary playing in Los Angeles. Each of these individually would have dominated the news cycle in 2015. Together in 2026, they are 3 items on a Friday morning news list. That tells you something about how much has been absorbed. And it should tell you something about how much more can be before the things being absorbed stop staying absorbed.